What we wanted to do is just kind of talk about the low-code capabilities of the platform. And if you're in either of those camps, someone who is a developer or administering a platform or consuming those type of applications and services, this is the right place, right? Because when we talk about low-code on the platform, we're talking about a number of things. And one is increased efficiency for people who are very technical and are programmers. But what we're also talking about is expanding the pool of people, the pool of resources that are available maybe to build some of these workflows and these applications. Because like Scott said, no one in today's day and age is thinking, boy, we have just a ton of developers sitting around, let's have them build something, right? And so, that's where a lot of the low code comes from, is just the need to develop things in a more efficient manner, to develop them faster, and then also to have a larger spectrum of people that are capable to build these applications. So if, to at least one person at the table, if you would go to developer.servicenow.com, what you can do is request what's called a PDI, that's a personal developer instance. And so what that will allow you to do is participate in building in the lab. And so the lab is publicly available. We'll give you a link to it. And so if you did want to maybe do it at a later time, if you don't have a computer here, that's certainly fine. You can work with your team and build out the lab, or sit around and drink beer and watch them. Both of those sound like fine options. All right, so the second step that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to request San Diego. And so ServiceNow generally names all of the releases after a city, except for U, that's Utah. So U is a state. But essentially all this means is this is the latest kind of major revision that we have, and those come out every 6 months, so twice a year. I'm having some, oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the problem, right? Is really we have a lot of things that need to get done. So there's a changing landscape. Certainly COVID was one of the big disruptors there. People started going remote. People started working in different areas and needed different workflows. And so what happened is what was traditionally face-to-face ways of communication, hopping to different cubes, sort of connecting the dots between everything that needed to occur to get work done in the business, that started becoming a lot more difficult. And so with that need, it's just harder to find the number of people that could build these applications. And so that's really one of the major problems of what we're trying to address. The other problem is a lot of these applications here are siloed. So, what we frequently see is people use ServiceNow, Salesforce, Power Apps, a number of different applications, maybe, various systems of record. And one of the problems that we have is people are actually performing the integration through like swivel chair interfaces. And so one of the major problems that we see is that the data isn't moving, right? And so let's see, one classic example would be an onboarding request. So an onboarding request is going to generally encompass a large number of systems, Azure AD. It might have a number of people that need to do badging or security, and so a number of things. And so without kind of an application or a platform that's governing that workflow from end to end, what you really have is kind of a number of kind of distinct point-to-point integration elements that don't really make up a business process as a whole. And so that's one of the things when we talk about ServiceNow as a platform of platforms that we're looking to address. And so we're really talking about two things. We're talking about speed and agility and time to development, but we're also talking about kind of expansive workflows that span multiple platforms, multiple groups, and multiple departments. Okay, and so that's where there's a lot of opportunity, right? We have the opportunity for a number of people now to start building these applications. And so this isn't only your pro code developers. This is our low code developers. This is our analysts. This is our business analysts. And so that's really one of the things that what we're going to try and show you today is that the accessibility of these tools and understanding how to build these processes and actually publishing these applications is really very easy, and a large number of people can do it. Okay, are there any questions about anything that we talked about so far? Is this all making sense? Anyone need a beer run? All right. So what we want to do now is let's talk about how this fits. We kind of talk bigger picture, right? Like all of these different systems, all of the different kind of people, maybe they can participate in application development. Let's talk about how this relates to ServiceNow as a platform. So one of the important things about ServiceNow, it's a little bit different than what's traditionally viewed as just a low-code platform, because there are a number of core workflows and applications that are available. So you're going to have a combination of baseline functionality and capability of the platform that are exposed through these applications. But then what you also now have is the ability to fill in all of these gaps with custom applications. And so these are things that are specific to your business, your own processes. And what we're seeing is that people are really viewing the ability to execute in a custom manner as a way to get a technical advantage. Because what's occurring is a lot of people are buying these same platforms. And if everyone's using the same platforms, then they have very similar business processes. And so a lot of people can derive a lot of kind of competitive advantage, whether that's with somebody, a direct competitor, or even if it's kind of internal, where you can expand your internal capabilities and provide better services. That's another benefit that people are realizing as well. All right, so this first application that we're going to look at, I built out part of this. And what we see in a lot of app engine applications that are built out is kind of three major elements. And so the first element is going to be how you're delivering value to your users. And so that might be things that the user are requesting from your group. That might be services that they might need. And so there's something of value that this group who needs to utilize this application wants to provide to a segment of people. The second is kind of around those services and requests, we a lot of time have questions. There's uncertainty maybe about the status of a good or service. And then the third one is problems or issues around these services. And so one example of this is the ITSM application in ServiceNow. And so for you guys that are familiar with the platform, these kind of swim lanes here probably look very familiar to you, because these are basically core principles of the ITSM application. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is look at a small, simple application that I built out that's utilizing this pattern. Before we hop actually to the platform, are there kind of any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay. So what I did is I was just thinking of a simple application that we could build out that was going to be a good example of the development pattern that we were talking about. And so when we look at True, what we have here is event registration, and that's one of the things of value that we're going to provide to our end users. And so I just built a very simple portal where people can engage with this simple application. But if we were to go to event registration, what we can do here is utilize this form that just has a few fields here, but to sign up for a previous event. And so what we have here is information associated with the event. I just put it in the future, but that Leilani was talking about that occurred a few weeks ago. But so what we can do with this application now is actually configure a new event. And so what I'm going to do is just copy this image and go into the application that I built and just register a new event. So let's just go create a new event. So low code. And I'm just going to mark this as. So I'm just going to set the time, and I'm just going to paste this. I'm going to paste the image and just save this event. And so now what we can do, if our user base wanted to try and find this event, then we could just go into low code, find it, and here's all this information. And so, what we're looking at is a couple of elements of this application, right? One is going to be that we're providing a mechanism for our end users to come in and find this event and register for the event. What we're also doing is providing a mechanism for administrators of this event, or administrators of this event. So people that are managing this event, what it allows them to do is utilize it and change it over time. Because that's really what we're trying to do in a number of ways, is kind of provide resiliency to change. And so one of the ways we can do that is allow for maybe these event administrators to administer the event, add new events. The other way is when we implement an application, there's a technical liability associated with that. So when we create, the more applications we create, the more people that use them, now that they're of value, they need to be supported to go going forwards. And so, what we're looking at is kind of two aspects of that support. Is one where the administrators can modify the application and enter the data that they need, and then we'll also look at how easy it is to structure this type of application, and what that will do is reduce our technical debt and technical liability going forward to modify this application based on changing business requirements. Does that all make sense? All right. So, we kind of took a whirlwind, we went through a whirlwind tour here where we created this new application on a portal where someone could come in and register for it. So what I'm going to do is just submit this application here. So one of the things that's very important when we're building out applications in these digital workflows that what you can realize is, because now we're interacting with this information in a structured environment, right? There was someone who came into the service portal who submitted a registration. There's someone now on the back end that is monitoring what's happening here. What we have is the ability to surface essentially what's happening and what's in flight. And so in this case, there isn't a lot of workflow associated with the event, but that's one of the core competencies of ServiceNow, is to perform the sequencing of approvals and tasks and integration points that that might be necessary in a business process. And so certainly all of those different kind of milestones and things that need to occur in a larger workflow can be all tracked here. And so there's a significant advantage to be able to see kind of exactly what's happening, right? And so this is the different, this is just one example of a request. But so what I wanted to do here is just go in and add the ability to provide inquiries and issues very quickly to this application. And so what we're looking at here is App Engine Studio. And so this is the new low-code tool set for the platform. And if you look at this is a pretty friendly environment. So typically when we can think about developer tools, it's a big mess. There's code everywhere. There's a gazillion files. And so it's just a lot to handle. But so the idea of this application is that it just makes it more accessible to people that might be technical project managers or very good with Excel or have supported another platform. Like we see administrators of like Box and Dropbox being able to come in and be productive in this type of environment and create applications that are of great utility, right? Because that's really what we want, is to build things quickly that are useful to people. And so what we feel like is this is a good opportunity for a large number of people to do that. So we're going to just hop in the application that I set up here. This is event management. And if you look at it here, it sort of walks you through the different steps that need to occur, right? So when we consider an application of this type, the first thing we need to do is define where is all of the information going to be stored, right? And so, one of the nice things about ServiceNow is it can be stored locally on the platform, and the information can be, users can interact with that information on the platform through this low-code UI that we're building. But there's also really extensive data integration capabilities. So, what we frequently see is a mix of data that's local to ServiceNow, and then those digital workflows are expanded to other systems that might be a system of record. And so one example of that might be SAP in a procure-to-pay or ERP scenario where SAP is very good at generating invoices and POs, but what they're not very good at is allowing users to request the status of their invoice or to see if their sourcing request is being worked. And so that's where there's a good opportunity to use ServiceNow to allow people to find answers to those questions, but still utilize a larger system like SAP for a procure-to-pay or ERP process. Okay, so we're looking at the data here. The second step now is we want to provide some windows for our end users to be able to interact with this information. And so this, in the platform, this is called experiences, and we've looked at 2 experiences already. And so one is going to be the submission of this type of request, the registration of event on the service portal, the way for our end users to find and interact with this, our little application here. The other is going to be through what's called a workspace. And so a workspace is going to be the work surface for people that are on the back end or fulfillment of these types of processes. And so, this event management is very simple, but what we'll look at in a second is creating the ability to, for a user to ask questions or to notify us of some issues. And so that's when it's going to be more important because people actually need to be involved in the remediation of those issues or responding to those questions. And so that's where it's important that we have an area where we can see what's happening and make sure that work's getting completed in a timely manner. Okay, so now we got, so in this case, there really isn't a whole lot of automation, right? So in the first example, what we have is the ability for a event administrator to create events, right, and manage the events, and then we have the ability for our end users to sign up for the different events. But so, if we go back to our use case where we're providing something of value to people and that they might need to interact with us around those things, let's take the first use case where if someone had a question related to an event. And so what we can do here is basically just creating a new table to store that type of question. And so what I'm going to do is just walk through and create a new table. And if you see here, there's a number of options that are available to us. So one of the ones that's very interesting is what we can do is we can upload a spreadsheet and actually create the structure of the record in the database automatically and import all the information from a spreadsheet. So this is a really good opportunity to take a spreadsheet that's really, it's amazing how much business is done on spreadsheets these days. Large businesses run on spreadsheets. So the big problem about a spreadsheet is there isn't really workflow associated with it. So you can't control the process around the modification of the data. Really, it's just a big grid of things. So what we really want to try and do is connect the storage of that data now and guide the user through normalized workflows. And so that's the major difference when we're creating an application like this, is we can store the data, allow a number of people to interact with that data in different ways, but then also have a guided process, right? So we can assign things to people. We can track how long they're taking to get completed. We can ask for approvals. And so the mechanical aspect of accumulating that information in a spreadsheet currently, it can be done, right? But there isn't anything that's enforcing it. Really, it's just up to the quality of data entry that someone might have that. So there's nothing really that's managing that process. And that's what we're trying to get to, and we're trying to do that, in just very quickly, right? In a way that kind of makes sense to a number of people so they can build and support this application. So what I'm going to do, though, is rather than uploading a spreadsheet, I'm going to do what's called extending a table. And so I already set up this event request. And so this is just a table that holds information around the event. But I'm just going to extend this, and we're going to call this an event question. Right? And so let's just call this event question. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just defining the name of the table where this data is going to get stored. And then also, one of the things that's a convention in ServiceNow is we have what's called an auto number. And all this really is when a new record is inserted, it takes this prefix and generates a number and that's associated with the record. And so the reason why that's a good idea is that sometimes if people are referring to a record outside of the system, it just provides an easy way to allow people to identify exactly which record they're talking about. Okay, but so here's the table here. And so that's really all it took is to create the new table. And so if we just go back to the home screen for this application, we can see now we just have another table related to event questions. So what I'm going to do now is create another type of experience, and this experience is called a record producer. And what the record producer is, all it really is it just creates a new form on the service portal. So it allows our users of this application to interact with this form. And so let's just see how easy that is to do. I'm just going to go in here and create a new experience, and then a record producer. And just give this a second. So let's just name this event questions. Done. And so now we can go into the record producer here. Oop, I should have clicked edit, not done. And if you look at this here, this is, again, a pretty approachable way to kind of build out the form and understand how our users are going to interact with this. So what we can do is just say, ask any question here. So give them some guidance. We need to define where this information is going to get stored. So let's just save this in the event question. What we can also do now is control where in this portal that we want to place it. So in this case, we're using the concept of a service portal. And so that's used very heavily in ServiceNow. And what it does is it allows our end users to have one website where they can find a number of different things that they might need. They might need to request a new laptop, or in this case, they might need to sign up for a new event. And so this just allows our citizen developer here to define where it's going to go. And we see here, I'm just going to put this in the HCC catalog. And then, so there's an events category that I'm going to add this to. And so this will allow the user to easily find questions that they might have associated with events. And so now we can get to actually building out the form. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert a question, or insert a field here. And we can just define which record in the table that this is going to get saved to. So let's just create a simple form here where I'm going to have a request details field. And so this is going to be a single line. And what I want to do is I'm going to make this mandatory. And so I'm just going to say, please describe your question. Right, so I'm going to insert this. And then I'm just going to add one more field. But one of the things that's really nice is, especially for someone that is maybe kind of getting used to this tool or kind of stepping up maybe from instrumenting Excel, is what we can do here is we can see exactly how this is going to look. And so they can get an idea while they're building it out of what it's going to look like in the service portal. And what we can also do is publish this application to the native ServiceNow mobile app as well. And so what we can do is we can look and see how this might look on a mobile app. And so this is a really nice feature, because what it does is it allows us to create one application that's going to run on a variety of viewports. And so what the ServiceNow application does is actually takes this configuration and configures basically a native user interface. So for both Android and iOS devices, it's very easy to define these applications and publish them out to the portal, publish them out to mobile. One of the things here, we have virtual agent, and that's basically a chat interface. And so there's just a lot of different channels that people can consume these services and kind of ask these questions with us. All right, so I'm just going to add one more field. So I'm going to make this multi-type or multi-line. And so I'm going to add this to additional info. All right. So what we just did is we created two fields or two questions on this form. If you look at this, we have a number of kind of options to control how this might look. And what's very important is this allows us to very easily structure the security. And so, a lot of these we might want to conditionally display to different segments of users. So maybe based on the department they're in, attributes of their user record, who their manager is, what type of employee there are, so we can have a lot of control over who might be able to access this. So this is pretty simple, but what I'm going to do is just submit it here. And now let's take a look at kind of how easy all of this is. So if we go back to the service portal and go to the event services, what we see here is our new event questions application form, right? And so beer time, I think it is. So that's our question. And so if we submit this, we also see that there's a number of things that a number of functionality that we're going to get from the platform, right? And so one of the really good ones is this threaded chat interface. And so what occurs is, if we needed to communicate with this person that's submitting this request, it's very easy for us to have a conversation with them, and all of that's associated ultimately with the record on the back end. So all of this information and data is tied together. So now let's just take a look at what's happened here. So let's refresh the request types. And we can see here that there's an event question, right? And so this is our new question. And we can also go in and let's just look at all of the different event requests. And here's our event question that we just submitted. And so all of the information that we just collected from the end user is right there. And so what we also have is a number of different kind of areas of the screen where we can communicate and we can add comments internally with our work notes. And what we also talked about how is if we need to communicate with our end user through here, then we can enter this information and it will show up immediately in the service portal for them. But what we also now have is this journaling or activity stream. And so that's one of the important things when we're looking at business processes is that we need to kind of, what we want to do is guide what's happening, but then also tell a story through the process. And so what we have here is the ability to accumulate the information as it occurs and kind of see everything associated with all of the changes to the record. Okay, so let's see, a time check. It's 4 o'clock here. Are there kind of, let's just recap what we did and then see if there's any questions associated with that. And then we kind of have a decision. We can either continue to live build this. We could even do something more complicated with workflow, or we can break up and do the lab. Mm-hmm.
I would ask a question about that particular thing there where the compose and the attachments and stuff. I mean, typically, depending on however this event thing is being worked through, when you could build a whole nother app for that piece of it, for the reaction to the questions, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what we're looking at is kind of a mix of, custom data, custom process, and then baseline capabilities. So you don't have to use any of those. You can kind of pick and choose what is going to be most useful for your use case. Yep. And that's an important comment about, particularly about kind of this dashboard. And so this is one that's very simple. But all of this was built without any code. And so what we're doing is basically dividing and aggregating the different requests based on different attributes and kind of understanding here, what is the distribution of different request types? How many people have assigned up for these different events? How many of these requests have been opened in the last day? And so, this is just an application that I built today, and so all of the requests are today. But these are just different facets and views that we can create very easily to kind of give us information about what's currently happening with these requests and workflows, and kind of is everything, is the ball getting dropped? Or are we expecting everything to get completed, right? Okay. So what we have here, if I can find my, I have too many tabs here. That's the problem. All right, here we go. Okay, so what tables either have a PDI set up or already had one? Does everyone have one of those? So what we're going to do is, I'm sorry, I said we were going to kind of like recap everything that we did. But for the folks that have a computer, if you want to just grab this URL real quick, then what this is going to do is direct you to a course that will talk about or kind of demonstrate a number of the concepts that we just discussed, and actually build out a workflow and approval. So it will be a substantially more complicated application that we just built. So if you just want to grab that URL, does everybody have it that's the team captain at the table? Call that a yes. Okay, so we'll talk about that course in just a second.
If anyone needs help, let us know.
And if your table feels like drinking beer and wine's a better option, that's fine too. So that's up to you. But so let's just kind of recap what exactly we did here, because we kind of blazed through it. But we want to make sure to leave enough time for the lab. All right. So what we did is we provided an application that consisted of a number of ways for our users to interact with the services we were providing, and the team if there were questions about the services. And so the way we did that is utilizing a service portal. And if we see here, there's also a search component. And so we don't necessarily only have to have these different types of forms and applications. We can have a number of them. And so, that's what's really great, is that what we can do is we can have a number of departments or a number of groups all have their services here and that they can provide to the end users. So if you have someone that might consume those services, they can come to one place, find all of them, and it's going to be a consistent user interface and a consistent way of interacting with the platform. So based on that, what we did is we created what's called a workspace. And so this is a specific application for the people that are going to be fulfilling those services or remediating the issues or asking the questions, so they can see exactly what's happening. And then they can also manage these different events, right? And so, the idea is that, let's say, so we took this use case around this event here at True. And so, currently they're using Eventbrite. That's a platform that's great. We could integrate with that as well. But what we can do here is utilize the platform and stand up something like this very quickly. So you saw how quickly the question form went up. The event form was probably 30 minutes as well. And so, and that's the idea of App Engine, is that what we can do is we can look at an opportunity to utilize technology to solve a problem. And what is great about that is it's not limited to a developer, or it's not limited to someone that's very technical. There's a large number of people that can do this. And so what Scott said is what, he mentioned governance. And so that's a big concern for platform people and IT people. They think, man, this is crazy town. Who's going to manage all of this? And so all of that governance and allowing people to build these applications, making sure these applications are of sufficient utility and quality before they're migrated from dev to production, all of those tools are built into the platform. And we don't have enough time to look at those today. But that's a critical part of enabling a program like this. Is what we want to do is we don't just want to have a ghost town of 1,000 apps that suck and aren't supported. What we want to do is provide guardrails around this capability. And so, so this is a big lever that you can use to build applications, but then also there is an ability to kind of throttle and control it and make sure that the execution side of it is useful to the business. Okay, let's hop back to this really quick. And so if you want to take this URL, I'm just going to open this up myself.
So does each table have a development instance with this URL open?
I'm just here.
Good choice.
Either way, you want to check up with everybody?
So let's just talk about this guide really quickly, because there's just a couple tricks to it. And so the nice thing about this is basically a self-paced lab. And so if we can't get through all of this today, that's not a problem. This is available to everybody. But when you start a module, there's two things that are occurring here. It's a little bit confusing. Is if you look at these steps that have this little paper, this is just informational and will kind of guide you and answer some questions and provide some scaffolding around what you're doing. And then the exercises is what you want to actually be doing. And so, this first step here is, it will walk you through the business problem and the different personas and, why and how we're building the application. And so, you can just kind of skim through the contextual elements here with the pages, but what you want to do is the one with the brackets. And so maybe what we can do is, get with your group and just start this first section, because we don't want to do all of them. So why doesn't everyone start with this first module, create an app and data model, and then we'll regroup after everyone's finished with that, and we're going to skip a few of these that I think that that might not be as useful, and so we're going to hold off on those just for time. All right, any questions for getting started? And we can shoot out all of these links in the deck too, so don't worry if you can't get it right now.